Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Chris, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Detzel?
Aye.
Mr. Yoshimura?
Here.
I hear. That isn't proper English.
Ms. Bradley? Here. Mr. DeGilbert?
Here.
Mr. Detzel?
Here?
Wow. Okay. Joe, do we have a legislative update?
There are nothing's going on in Columbus right now.
Jim, Butler Tech?
Yeah, I have a few things here. Just a reminder, October 17th is the all boards meeting. That's going to be up at our Fairfield Township campus, which is D. Russell Lee. We have gone to changing the names to the locations of where the campuses are at.
I'll do that at the end.
And also on that night at D. Russell Lee, the Bioscience, which is Westchester Township, and the Natural Science Center, which is the farm is in front of Monroe High School. We're going to have showcases. The students are going to be there from every class and have a showcase what their class is about. It starts at 3 o'clock and goes to 8 o'clock. And that's for any of the parents, any of the community members that want to get there. The only thing with the all boards meeting for the board members, dinner's at 6. So if you want to get there and get to the different campuses, you're going to have to get there kind of early to try and get through everything. And then June 9th through the 12th of 2020, we're going to have the state ACTE conference at Butler Tech.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's, I'll have more info on that as it gets closer. And then that's it.
So if there's any families out there of even middle school age kids?
Absolutely, yeah. Just, it starts at 3. You can pick whatever campus you want to just stop in and check out what the kids are actually doing and what the class is all about. So that's, anybody needs to do it, just get back with me and then I can get you the addresses and where the classes are at, whatever your child's interested in.
Okay. Do we have any reports from employee organizations? Certificated and licensed? Classified? Any reports from school-related organizations? I have one request for community comments. Zoe Blum, if you'd like to come up here. And the levy and its effect. And we just try to limit the comments to about 3 minutes.
So us at the high school, we've heard that if the levy were to fail, then pretty much any like music or like elective, basically at the elementary would be taken away and it would be basic education. So we really just want to know like how that would affect the high school.
Okay. We're actually, there's going to be a presentation later in the meeting that we're going to discuss all the different options for the cuts,
All right.
which is not a fun topic at all. But, so if you can stay for the rest of the
No,
meeting?
of course.
Perfect.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
First item is certificated licensed personnel items. It is certified retirements and resignations. Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the certified retirements and resignations as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions regarding the retirements or resignations? Okay, Chris? Motion passes 5-0.
Next item is classified personnel items. It is classified retirements and resignations. The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the classified retirements and resignations as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Questions? Motion passed 5-0.
Next item is the special meeting minutes for August the 12th. So I recommend that the Board of Education dispense with reading of and approve the special meeting minutes as listed.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Are there any additions or corrections with the meeting minutes for the special meeting on August 12th? Motion passed 5-0.
And the next item is the regular meeting minutes for August 12th also. So I recommend that the Board of Education dispense with reading of and approve the regular meeting minutes as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Questions? Okay. Motion passed 5-0.
Next is the financial report for the month of July. The all funds balance is a little over $65 million, and our general fund unreserved balance is around $32 million. Our revenues for the month of July are at 24% because we've received the second half taxes. We get our tax revenue twice a year. And our expenditures are at 7%. The investment return is down to 2.24%. Our investment return on investment percentage is decreasing. And also, I wanted to mention, at last meeting, we talked about the cash reserve policy. And last year, we were able to generate almost $1 million in interest revenue because of our cash reserves and being able to invest those dollars. So as those dwindle, so will our ability to raise additional funds through interest revenue. And the list of monthly bills, we had our routine monthly bills as well as severance payments, instructional software, alarm services, safety software, the Ohio Writing Project, the Connections Program, paying athletic officials, our non-pubs purchased some iPads, we had our map testing, and some bonus parts and services. So with that, I'd like to ask the board to approve the financial report for the month of July.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Are there any questions?
Yes. The 8% that's represented there, Amy, what does that cover? What is that representing? That number?
8%. So we're the 8% is 1 month through the year. So that would be if we're on trend, our expenditures and revenue will be around 8% of the year. 1 month.
1
On a
month
12
represents-
is 8% for the year,
This is one, okay, this all represents 8% of.
July.
of the year. So the month of July for our fiscal year is 8% of the year.
Got it.
We've completed 8% of our year. Sorry, I'm trying to find a way.
You're fine. So what you're talking about here is only 8% of the whole budget, is that what you're?
8% of the year.
Of the year.
So revenue-wise, we've received 24% of our revenue for the year, and we're only 8% of the way through the year. Because of our property taxes, we only receive twice a year. State pays us on a monthly basis, taxes come in twice a year. So we get it in July and remaining in August, and we have to budget that money and spend that money through December.
How do I tell them here if we're spending above our target or below our target?
Oh,
That's
okay.
it.
So where it says May forecast,
Uh-huh.
that's the budget.
Okay,
The month of July,
is what you spent.
and then year-to-date. So each month, it will change, so it'll say August, and then it'll say year-to-date, which will combine July and August. And then the forecast is the budget that we're comparing to, and then the number is the percentage of the budget. So 7% of expenditures have been spent in the month of July, and we're 8% through the year.
Gotcha. Understand, appreciate it.
Okay.
Anybody else? Motion passed 5-0.
Okay, next is then and now certificates over $3,000. The Ohio Revised Code 570541D states that if there's not a purchase order in place prior to an expenditure or covering the expense and the amount is $3,000 or more, it requires the Board of Education to authorize the treasurer to pay. We had one purchase, it was for 2 used buses that we were able to obtain. We had actually borrowed these buses last year to help us with athletic and field trips. And then over the summer, these buses were traded in by another school district, and we had the opportunity to purchase them. So it was a timing effect. We had to hurry to purchase them in order to be able to get them. And it was just timing of trying to get the purchase order in place. And it's all within our budget. It's not an increase in budget. So we have an $8,000 then and now that means separate.
It's a pretty good deal.
Treasurer recommends the Board of Education authorize the payment over $3,000 requiring a then and now certificate as listed.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Are there any additional questions? Motion passed 5-0.
Okay. Last I have to accept and appropriate a local grant. This grant is for the Learning Links for the Colerain High School for $1,000. So annually they apply for a grant that takes the Colerain Cardinals to the Children's Theater of Cincinnati. This allows them the opportunity to attend Cincinnati Children's Theater for 5 classes at Colerain High School.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any questions? Motion passed 5-0.
Thank you.
Next item is a general business item. It is a resolution to accept bus stops. They were presented as information at our last meeting. Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the bus stops as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Questions regarding bus stops?
I don't have a question, but I know in our pre-meeting, I spoke with Todd about this specifically, and there aren't any issues with any of the road or the bus stops on here, so they've all been resolved. Is that correct, Chris?
Anybody else?
A little smoother than last year.
Okay. Motion passed 5-0.
The next item is vendor contracts. The superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education approve the vendor contracts as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions regarding vendor contracts? Motion passed 5-0.
Next item is a business item, Colerain High School Baseball Slope Remediation Project. In order to adjust a contract previously approved by the Board of Education, it was necessary to make some changes. What they found is when they started to try to fix the slope, and this is the side that goes away from left field down there, they continue, I believe today, the latest thing we found is there was a building buried there underneath the soil. So it was retaining water in itself, and this was a long time ago. So this is basically getting into our contingency funds so that we can complete the project in a manner that is best for the field to maintain it and make sure we don't have to revisit it in the future. The amount that will be used is $17,770 added on to the original cost. Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the change order as listed.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any questions? Too bad there wasn't a buried treasure in that building. That would have been nice.
Yep.
Okay. Motion passed 5-0.
Next item is certificated licensed personnel items. Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the certificated licensed personnel items as listed.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Are there any questions regarding the personnel items? Motion passed 5-0.
Next item is classified personnel items. Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the classified personnel items as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Questions regarding classified personnel? Motion passed 5-0.
The next item is curriculum and instruction, is White Oak Middle School field trip request for Camp Camel Guard. There will be no cost to the district for this field trip. The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the field trip as listed.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved in second. Any questions? As always, I think White Oak does a great job sending kids to this leadership camp, and look forward to hearing from some of them in the near future, to hear from the kids directly what they experienced that weekend, or weekday. Motion passed 5-0.
Okay, the next item, we'll put a PowerPoint up on the screen. It is an expenditure reduction proposal in a levy fail scenario. You can move it, so you can go to the next slide. We are currently in an $8.5 million spending deficit. This is even a change from last year when we went around and met with staffs at our schools and our PTAs. We were at a 6.5. It has continued to increase due to reductions in state funding. As you can see up here, based on our state funding laws, our district only receives 40% of basic education funding from the state. The other 60% is required to be raised by local taxes. Currently, our local taxes only account for 40%, leaving a gap in revenue on the state funding formula for basic education. Revenue from a levy is fixed when that amount is passed and never increases. Expenditures, however, increase on a 3% inflation rate yearly. Currently, our district is underfunded by state and local efforts for basic education. The operating cost of the district has naturally risen over the past 12 years, but the funding raised from taxes has not. As we said, it stayed the same. The district has not raised taxes since 2007. In 2012 and in 2017, Northwest Local School District passed renewals of this emergency levy. These two levies did not raise taxes. Renewal levies have a set dollar amount, and that amount never changes. The amount of funds received in 2012 and 17 were based on 2007 amounts. Amy, anything you'd like to add to that piece?
No, just the fact that anything that we offer that is above basic education, which is several things, are also not funded locally. We're using funds that we receive not only to provide the basic education that we provide, but all the services and opportunities above basic education.
Next slide, Chris. Tonight's list of reductions are being presented as a draft of what would be reduced in a levy fail scenario. The final motion by the Board of Education as they vote will be September 9th. If the levy passes in November, these reductions will not be put in place. So again, if the levy passes in November, these will not be put in place. We created a staffing plan last year and presented it to the Board of Education. It showed our stakeholders what is needed to maintain current programs at each school. Reductions made last year and this summer that will reduce expenditures for this year. So we enforced the transportation policy of 1 mile. That's a $300,000 savings that was not here last year but is now here this year. We had to RIF an assistant director in AO and 2.25 curriculum supervisors for a savings of $340,000, and we did not replace a supervisor of special education. So that was a savings of $90,000. So those are savings this year for this money we are spending that will not be there, but they were there as a cost to the district last year. Next. So if we start looking at each department and each level of school, for administrative offices, a technology or a receptionist, that is the person who answers the phone at the front. So from now on, if that person is not with us, you would get a voicemail service that would pick up the phone and direct you to choose whichever department you are looking for or type in the individual's name. But that is someone who meets and greets people as they enter the door, we would have to move someone else from in this office on a rotating basis out of their office and up to make sure we could answer the door, but the phone system would go to voicemail. Technology assistant is someone who helps out in the technology department, but also makes all the copies for the district, handbooks, anything that is bulk copying. She makes copies, very busy all summer long. So that is her position. Instructional technology and innovation coach, we have one for 1,200 employees. This is a person who goes around and assists with teachers using technology in the classroom. Again, we have one for 1,200 employees. Extra service days, counselors, librarians, folks who have extra service days above and beyond our 185-day contract. Responsibility factor is our 3 middle school coaches because of what they do, so those would go away. OP5 is a secretary, either in this office or the special education office. That decision will be made later. 1 district social worker, and the special education supervisor, which we told you was for this year's savings. The next chart you'll see up there, and we did separate the high schools because they are diverse in their sides. Colerain High School, 7 teachers. We don't know who those teachers would be. It would be the administration picking and choosing what we could do to keep the best education for our kids, but it's decisions they will make. Study hall monitors would go. So what this could mean is several things. We could look at a 6-bell day and no study hall involved. We would look at the possibility of putting plan bells prior to school starting for 45 minutes, which means if a teacher is out during the day and we don't have a sub, we would have to do like other districts do and put the kids in the gymnasium or the cafeteria because we would not have a sub to take over the class. Blended assistants, we have blended classrooms that have 50 kids in them. This is not all the blended assistants, but it is 2. So any that are left would have to go back and forth between the blended classes that have 50 or more students. Our librarian is currently a certified teacher. If we would change that to an assistant, that would be a $50,000 savings. We have an assistant AD grounds person at Colerain High School. That position would be reduced. An assistant principal would be reduced. And our nurses, you do not by law have to have nurses in your building. We do it because we care about our kids. And there is a lot of cases where they have to have a lot of help, feeding tubes, stuff like that. All you have to have is a health assistant. So that is a reduction. So the reductions total for Colerain High School would be $968,537. Northwest High School reductions. 5 teachers, their dean of students, and just so everybody is aware, the dean of students assist with discipline. We'll talk about them in our middle schools and our elementary schools. They are not an assistant principal, but they help the principal with discipline. They do not do teacher evaluations. 3 tutors, math, language arts, and science. All would not be replaced. These help our kids pass OGT tests, other tests, end of course exams when we had OGT, and prior to that, they helped with OPT. So they help with our kids, especially our seniors who graduate. They would no longer have assistance from them. This would be a big loss. Our librarian is again a teacher. It would be reduced to an assistant, and that savings would be $50,000. Blended assistants, same as Colerain. Nurse, same as Colerain. Next is our middle schools. 12 teachers total, 4 from each schools. They would no longer be able to do teaming. They would also have to look at the plan bell being provided before the school day starts, and they again would not have study halls and not have the liberty of scheduling them in. 3 deans, 1 at each middle school, so that would leave a principal and assistant principal. An OP4, that would leave 2 secretaries in the building, 1 for the counselor's office and 1 for the main office. And again, our nurse. I cannot get over the importance of teachers, classified employees, and everything they do for our kids. We're not doing this because we want to, but we're doing this because if this levy doesn't pass, these are the reductions that have to be made. You cannot spend more money than you take in. Lastly is our elementary schools. 5 deans, so 1 at each building. 5 counselors, which we just instituted counselors 2 years ago in our elementary schools. All gifted instruction would be gone. We have a playground assistant, so let's think about what that does. If that person is gone, teachers will now have to balance their lunches at different time because teachers have to cover their own recess. So if you have 6 in a grade level, 3 might eat lunch first while 3 do recess, then rotate in. It's going to take instructional time away from the kids. We could also look at what we've done in the past at some of the other buildings, especially elementary, where the plan bell goes before the school day starts and there would be no plan bells during the day. So in elementary, your classes could go from 24 and 25. If you don't have a sub, they could go to 35 apiece because we won't be able to offer all the bells of specials, art, music, PE, technology, library that they need in order to have plan bells. Switch from a nurse to a health assistant, all 5 schools. 5 music positions, there are 8 total. The 3 that are left would rotate between them, and band would no longer be offered at the elementary schools. And then in addition to that, 2 grade level teachers per building. And the principals would have to base that each year on what class sizes are. And things like this will take classes from where we have them sitting from anywhere from 20 to 24 in kindergarten, 20 to 23 in first and second, and then it goes on up, but most of the classes would be anywhere from 27 to 30 and higher. Total reductions, when you add it all together, $9.5 million. What I would like you to notice here is what is under the schools and AO. There is a savings of going to a level 4 cleaning. That would be 16 custodians / maintenance. Level 4 cleaning means that buildings get cleaned every other day. Level 4 cleaning means that teachers take out their own garbage. Level 4 cleaning means that we can't wipe down everything we need to in order to prevent germs, clean our desk, and keep things as clean as we want to. It doesn't mean that we won't work as hard. We'll do as much as we can, but you're going to be very limited when you reduce custodials to level 4 cleaning. That's almost $1 million savings. If you look at cutting sports and extracurriculars, this includes an AD at each high school, this is a $1.5 million savings. Lastly, resource officers. If they're removed from the schools, we have 2 at Colerain High School, 1 at Northwest High School, 1 at Colerain Middle, and 1 at Pleasant Run Middle, and then all our traffic folks that are out front. $555,000, $500,000 in savings. So as the board looks at this list here, the purpose of tonight's presentation is so they can ask questions, dig deeper, and that the 5 of them can make a decision on what they would like to reduce in order for us to get out of a spending deficit if the levy fails. If you go to the next slide, Chris. Other things we have talked about is closing all buildings at 4 o'clock. All rentals would be eliminated for public and parochial parents. That cost us a lot of money, and to keep them open as we do currently, we are not covering what our cost is as a district. The one thing I want to bring to everybody's attention, because I've heard many times, what if it fails? We have to add an additional $5.5 million in cuts. So if this fails in November, we have to cut an additional 5.5. You truly then are looking at a basic education at both high schools, math, language arts, science, social studies, PE health as required by the state, and all electives would be through Butler Tech. So you basically get to an education, it's English 1, English 2, English 3, and English 4. On top of that, if it goes to March and it does pass or doesn't pass, we've still lost funding. The way funding works for the state of Ohio is if we pass it in November, we don't get that funding until 2020. If it doesn't pass in November and it passes in March, we don't get that funding till 2021. So the 5.5 isn't even enough. So for the naysayers who say, well, it's not going to pass this first time, we'll pass it the second, please understand what you're doing to our community, to our schools, and to our kids. You are jeopardizing everything we have based on this November levy. The next levy will not, for any reason, come back at a lesser amount. It will have to go to 11 to 12 mills in order to do what we need to do. So if passed in March, again, if it doesn't pass in November and it passes in March, we still have to look at reductions because we've missed a year and a half of funding. Passing it in November is the only option to maintain what's best for our kids. We're all here because of kids. And to look at the devastation that would occur if it doesn't pass in November is not good. So tonight, any questions by the board? The board has big decisions to make. Do they want to keep what's up there? Do they want to have discussions about what's up there? All of this has to be public discussion. This is not allowed in executive session. We're not allowed to sit in executive session and discuss cuts and reductions on a levy. It all has to be public. So any questions, Amy and I will be glad to help, or anybody who's sitting here, about what was up there and anything you guys want to say or ask.
Can you walk us through the methodology of how you picked each of these items?
Yeah, so we met with administrators last year, as I've said in several meetings. We got a list from them. As I said before, we met with, the principals met with their BLTs, got staff input from classified and certified. All staff should be aware if they wanted to. We had a couple schools who said, I'm not recommending anything because we can't afford to make any cuts. So what came back from them was nothing. So this is a collaboration of those meetings and putting all the cuts together of what would add up to enough money to stop the deficit spending in a levy fail scenario.
So what I'm seeing on the screen was had a $9.5 million total, but then there's another screen that says that the levy fails and we need $5.5 million. So is it saying of that 9.5?
We'd need an additional 5.5. If it fails in November, that 8.5 to 9 will stay in place. If it fails in November, that stays in place, and we need to add an additional 5.5 million in cuts.
So what does the 9.5 represent if we still need, so really you need $15 million?
No, if it passes, we won't need anything. If the levy passes at 7.5, then that covers what we need. There won't be any reductions.
Hang with me on a second. So what you had on the sheet said $9.5 million worth of cuts, the several sheets that went there. And then it says that the levy fails. And my understanding is that 9.5 is that this is what we need to reduce.
We need between 8.5 and 9.5.
Okay. But then another slide says that the levy fails, we need 5.5.
Yes. So if it fails in November and we have to go back out to the community and ask in March, it would have to increase, because we would have to increase another $5.5 million, because we would have received that revenue in this fiscal year. By having to go out another calendar year and pass the levy, that means it's another fiscal year till we receive that money, and then we only receive half in one fiscal year. So we are short revenue in the time frame, $5.5 million. That's why it increases between November and March.
You see how that sounds kind of, off? It's like we have this sheet that says 9.5 million if the levy fails. If it fails, then you're saying you need another 5.5 on top of that, so that brings it to $15 million. Why don't we show $15 million worth of cuts? That's what really represents if the levy fails, right? Correct?
Yes, because it's timing. If we pass it in March, like we need to pass it in March because we're already behind in deficit spending, asking for 15 million and asking for 12 mills would not be accurate.
No, I'm not asking to ask for 15 or 12 mills. I'm saying the presentation of 9.5 mil doesn't really represent anything. That's saying if the levy fails, we need $9.5 million in cuts. But what you're saying is that we really need $15 million in cuts if the levy fails in November. No?
If it would fail again, then in March. No.
Can you go back up to the slide where it says 5.5 million? If the levy fails in November, we need additional 5.5 million cuts. But
If
then
it passes, we don't need any.
Yeah, I'm talking about fails. So if the levy fails in November, we need an additional 5.5 million, but we already talked about $9.5 million worth of cuts for November.
So, yes, confusing. We would need an additional 5.5 million in revenue to make up. So we would have, those are the temporary reductions we would have to do, between 5 and 7 million in temporary reductions if we're a year behind. And then reduction. The 5.5 million gets us to the 12 mills is what we have to increase from 7.5 mills to 12 mills to make up that revenue by being from November to March and another calendar year off.
Because
So what's
basically,
revenue and what's
even though the levies from November to March is only 4 months, by not passing the levy in November, we're gonna wait a whole additional year to get the revenue if it isn't passed until March. So we're gonna need money to operate because we won't be getting the revenue we would have got in January of 2020 because of a successful November levy.
Yeah, I completely understand that. What I'm not understanding is that we're presenting, if the levy fails in November, we have $9.5 million in cuts we're gonna need to make, correct?
Correct.
You have recommended $9.5 million in cuts.
Right. Okay? And then we
If the
say-
levy fails.
Right, and then we say here, if the levy fails, we need another 5.5. So why are we even saying about 9.5? What does that represent?
Well,
If
we're
we're
trying to pass a levy, so we're telling people if the levy passes, all these cuts go away. If the levy doesn't pass, we have to make 9.5 million in cuts.
Yeah.
So we have to then vote as a board, when do you want to put it up again? If you vote again to put it up in March, we've lost funding from November to March, so as soon as we find out if it passes or fails, remember you're dealing with our staff who has feelings, who are human beings that we love, and our kids who we love. To put 14.5 million doesn't make sense because we're assuming it's going to pass in November. And if it doesn't, I mean, do you disagree or you don't think it's going to pass, or would you like us to do it differently?
No,
I'm
you
just-
used the right word, you're assuming it's gonna pass, but I'm just saying the statement or the number is, you're just saying 9.5 in November, then another 5.5.
If it doesn't pass, then we will come to the board in January with another $5.5 million in cuts. So we would take that 5.5 plus the 9.5, hand RIF notifications to all the staff.
In January, okay.
I think it's that we would need an additional 5.5 million in revenue if it didn't pass until March. And then we would also have to do temporary reductions because of that gap in funding, having to wait a whole nother fiscal year.
Yeah, I understand that part of it, it's just
I
that,
think that's 5.5 million in additional revenue.
I guess it's where you're assuming the financial liability. We're not assuming that financial liability until after November. So it's not
Because we don't
factored
know
into
if
the
we have
equation.
it.
Right.
Correct.
It's a variable, unknown variable.
another question I have is, have there been other feedbacks on other opportunities for cuts within the staffing or the community on things that they may have, have any of that been taken into consideration?
I need examples of what you're talking about.
We mentioned about 7 teachers or 5 teachers cut. Have there been any consideration that no teachers are cut, but everybody absorbs the salary reduction as a community as a whole, as an option? Same thing with the AO office.
What do you mean by absorbs?
So instead of cutting 7 teachers, that total,
So at Colerain High School, they have got 7 teachers. And so if we don't cut those 7 teachers, what would we do?
how many teachers are at Colerain High School total?
75?
So that would be roughly a 10% reduction across the board instead of 7, a 10%
Well,
cut.
for the final recommendation, you'll have a number of teachers that are reduced. So it goes 7, 5, 12 from the middle school, and then the teachers for the elementary. So it'll say we are reducing this amount of staff.
Are you asking, could the district choose to say everyone's going to take a 10% reduction in their salary instead of cutting teachers?
Correct.
We have a contract that we have to follow that outlines the salary schedules. So
Has to be
without
negotiated.
without changing the contract, we couldn't do that.
So, can you say that again, without changing?
Without changing the contract that we have with the union, we could not do that.
Could you change the contract?
You'd have to go to the table and bargain
You have
that,
to
and
bargain.
you'd have to agree.
So it's like, that's another, so that is an option. It's gonna take some work, but that could be done.
It could be broached at the table to see if it was something that the union would agree to, but it would have to be something that was voted on by the actual constituents in the union.
Is the administrative office in the union as well?
No.
No. Okay, so the administrative office section, it has individuals on that one as well, but not the cabinet or anybody at that
We did the
level?
cabinet reductions last year, so they would be the first ones to be cut, and the 3 out of curriculum. Assistant director and the 3 curriculum folks.
But there are other members that are still remaining in the cabinet, so have
Yes,
they-
everybody's sitting in this room.
Have they been impacted by any cuts?
We're all impacted. We're picking up for the work that's no longer in curriculum, and our assistant director that's no longer with us.
Financially?
Nobody's being impacted in the district financially, no.
Okay. And then how many, we talked about I know in our separate meeting, the assistant principals at Colerain High School. How many assistant principals at Northwest High School? How many Susans here?
We have 2 assistants and an athletic director, and 800 students. On a daily basis, that attend Northwest, probably 775. Because of Butler Tech programs.
Are there currently 4 or 5 assistant principals at Colerain?
You have
4
4
and 1
assistants and an
assistant
AD, and 1,800 students.
How many students are Colerain? 1,800?
1,800. And if you do a breakdown, and they have a dean at Northwest, Colerain does not.
The
If you-
numbers, sorry, go ahead.
If you do the breakdown, the administrators at Colerain have a bigger student population than the Northwest.
The numbers that were of the total for the 9.5, 9.6 million cut, is that just salary or is that salary and benefits? Then including-
Salary and benefits.
So the 9.5, that total would be what you would be requesting, or is there like some part of that that the board could adjust?
It's the board's decision. It's the 5 of you who work as one to make those decisions.
Other questions?
Amy, the recommendation from your position would be, if levy fails scenario, what amount would we need to cut? Prior to not knowing, to the unknown of if we can get it passed again the next time around.
Okay, so our current forecast shows the current year about $8.5 million in deficit spending, and next year goes to around $11 million in deficit spending. So it's going to keep increasing. The longer it takes to pass something to increase revenue, the more cuts we're going to have to continue to make, even if we're making them each year as we go.
So realistically, at least the 9.5 would be what we would need to make a decision on.
Yes.
Well, I want to first start out by saying that I can't imagine any of you sitting in the room don't feel like I just want to get sick, because you can't point at any one school and think there's a magic answer to, oh, we'll get rid of this or we'll get rid of this. $9.5 million is a lot of money. And if you can go back to the slides that actually show figures next to all these things, it takes a lot of cuts to come up to that. And I'll be the first to say, I don't want to do any of them. We're already, there's so much more we could be providing the kids, and we can't afford to do it. We do a pretty darn good job based on the percent that we really do, this district really does fund education. But with that said, number one, we've been saying this for how many years now? The passage of this levy is so important, and it needs everybody, not just to come when there's a meeting because of a chopping block. We need people on the ground, boots, and we need students, we need everybody to explain to their neighbors, to explain to the people that don't have kids in our schools why it is so important and what's going on each day in the classroom and what you're getting out of your education, and why it's still important that we need everyone to support this for the community. I honestly don't know. I mean, you look there, and in today's world, how do we take our resource officers out of our schools when we really need more? We've cut back on transportation, yet we still provide more transportation than our surrounding school districts. The state says we only bus for 2 miles and out. Because we care about the kids and the safety of the kids, we bus kids 1 mile and out. And included in those resource officers, in that $555,000 are those officers that are there to direct traffic, to hope that a child doesn't get hit because somebody might be walking. I mean, I don't know. I mean, to me, you see every single thing on the list. It takes every single thing on the list to get to the total we need. And yet, then we have to come back in March and we have to ask this community to pass a levy probably 2 or 3 times larger than we've ever passed a levy in the history of this district. And we're just providing a basic education. It just doesn't make sense. We've got to step up and fund, whether we agree or disagree, that the state of Ohio doesn't do their job when it comes to education. But guess what? It's been almost 25 years. They were found unconstitutional the way this state funds schools. And you know what? It'll probably be another 25 years. We can't sit here and just hope that changes, because all they do is keep adding more unfunded mandates, meaning they just give more things for us to do in a day and yet don't give us any way to pay for it. I don't want to see extracurriculars gone, but I don't want to see anything that touches the classroom. We have to keep the cuts as far away from the classroom as possible. We have to. And that's just to provide a basic education. So there's no win in this except to have a successful levy. But the sad thing is, it's not going to give us enough to give more. It's just to keep what we have. But what we have right now is a heck of a lot better than what this district's going to look like if all these cuts happen. I mean, this district's never seen just a basic education. I don't know. I know I'd like to see every seat filled. I'd like to see this room packed and people passionate about what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen. Not just, well, I don't want this to happen because I'm in this class, or I don't want this to happen because I'm in this class. It's a community, it's all of us. And there's people working really hard, and to cut one person's salary or cut 3 person's salary is still not going to make $9.5 million go away. And contrary to what people believe, you can't run a district if you get rid of everybody that's sitting up here. You got to have an HR person. You got to have curriculum so that they can work with our staff to do the things that are going on in the classroom. We are finally making strides in the right direction. So yeah, it's easy to say, let's get rid of administrators, and then what? Add more onto the teachers? Oh, in your spare time, go home and research what you should be doing in the classroom. Every one of these positions is important. And I can tell you, everybody in the whole district works very, very hard. And I think we have proven we are not mismanaging funds. So I mean, I really don't know what it is for the board to discuss, because I don't think there's any, I mean, proportionately, sadly, all the schools are affected. And it's pretty across the board. And we're going to leave an unsafe school, and really sad at 4 o'clock. I don't know what else to say.
I can't disagree with what you say. I look at it from the financial standpoint, that my property, my house that I own in this district, if this levy goes down, it's my most important asset that the majority of people who live in this district have. If you wait and see how much your property value is going to plummet, if you go in and you can't pass this levy in November and you don't pass one in March, you will have a mass exodus of people trying to get out, trying to sell their houses. It will be much easier financially. It will be such a smarter decision to pass a levy, to maybe spend another $40 more a month on your property taxes than lose $10,000 in the value of your house if you would go to sell it. I try to break it down in simple terms for people to understand that own property and have a house. I would much rather pay $40 more a month on my property taxes than go to try and sell my house and, sorry, you know, it's $10,000 less than you want to get or what it's worth right now. If that happens, you look from a year from now and see what the values drop. It's financially, it's not, and I get it, people will vote no, but based on the financial end of it, it's a mistake to vote no, because your house is your most important asset, the majority of the people. I don't know, that's how I look at it, and, I mean, that's why I'm gonna vote yes for the levy, absolutely. You know, maybe that's a little selfish, I want my house, my value to be higher than what it should be, absolutely. I'd rather pay a little bit more each month than to have my house drop $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 if I would go to sell it. And that's what you will have if you are back to a basic education in this district.
I think we need to talk a little bit more in consideration for those who are opposed to the levy and understand a bit more why. No one wants to hurt the children. No one wants to hurt the community. No one wants to see their property value goes down. But even in spite of that, you still have people who recognize that information, recognize the potential to their home value, recognize the potential unfortunate harm to the students, but still are looking to vote no for the levy. And I think there is a lot of short-sightedness in not looking outside of one direction and understanding that group as well, and what their issues are and their reasoning behind it. And it's a Japanese term, judoka, is trying to countermeasure the possible issue. And I don't think that that's going on here at all. We hear that, you know, the community hears that we don't want to impact, nobody wants to hurt the children, don't want their property values up. But there still is a large group that is not interested in supporting this levy, and I don't think that there's a lot of consideration taken into why.
What was the last thing you just said? I couldn't hear you.
I said there's a large group of individuals who understand that there may impact their property values, understand that unfortunately some students may get harmed in the decision, but they still are not interested in supporting the levy. And I don't hear anyone speaking on why that group of individuals are not interested in supporting
Let's
the
have
levy.
them come up to the podium and let's hear what they got to say. If somebody wants to vote no, let's hear why they vote no against the levy. I mean, it's easy to sit here and say that. I mean,
I think we're also presumptuous that there isn't anybody. If you're saying that there's nobody at the podium.
no, I know there's people. I've worked on these levies for 30 years. And every time, 40% of your people will vote no, 40% will vote yes. You got to get the 20% in the middle to vote with the levy, to get a levy passed. I get that. I personally don't understand that. I would always vote for levy because I think it's important in education for the kids to give our kids a better education than I got from this district that I grew up in and graduated from. I will never understand why they vote no. Yeah, the majority of the answers, I don't want my property taxes going up. Well, you know, it is what it is. You live in the state of Ohio. You know how public schooling is funded.
Yeah.
If it's a problem, then you move out of the state of Ohio. But that's what it is. We know how it is. It's property taxes that fund it. I'll never understand to vote against a kid in getting an education. In my opinion, that's what a no vote means, is voting against our kids of our district.
So unfortunately, you said that you will never understand why they vote no, so that's why they're not approaching the podium to talk to you, to have an open
They
conversation.
can call me, and I'll talk to anybody, anytime, anywhere.
Are you supporting the levy?
I don't want to give my personal, and I think that's very crash for you to ask my personal decision on
okay.
levy, but that's not something I will begin to disclose.
What have you heard as far as the vote no on the levy? I'm sure you've heard some things, or you would not have brought this up.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with results, that, you know, curriculum-wise or education-wise, we're still failing in a lot of cases. So if we're failing with these dollars, why am I giving you more? You know,
And are they aware, as you found, as when you got on the board, that we've continued to make reductions over the past 5 years? It's hard to make improvements when all you do is reduce. This isn't the first time we've reduced. Amy can show you monies that we've reduced in positions as we've gone through the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Now, are they where we want it to be? No, but we've made changes to get it in the right direction. You can't go from a 50% passage rate to all of a sudden get the magic state mandate of 75 in a 2-year period. It takes time to get past those things.
Yeah, being on the board, I've learned a lot that I'm trying my best to share as constructively as I can with the community. One of the first slides on there talks about what the reductions were as far as we reduce this, we reduce this, we reduce that. But as a board member learning, it only shows half the story. You haven't shown what you added, the positions that you've added onto the thing. It only shows what you're showing here is only part.
If you take the only thing that was added were deans to the list for elementaries last year, because we did our staffing plan, if you remember back to the spring of last year, showing this is what we needed to make the improvements we need to do academically. So we put a staffing plan together that is still kind of not what we want it to be, but it's all we could afford. So the amount of reductions, I mean, if you want specifics, we can look up specifics for you. That's what a public meeting's for. We don't know unless you speak. So.
Oh, I see. But I'm saying that you only showed a slide of what you reduced. You didn't show the slide of what you added, even the dean level. There's more than just the deans. There's people here that were added from the 18-19 school year. But you didn't show that slide of what you added. So it's only showing one side of the picture.
But it's still continuous reductions over the last 5 years.
But I'm saying you're only showing the community, they
So
only see one side. They
we
don't see
spend levy meetings all the time talking about these topics and what do we need to get out. I will make sure firsthand that this is something we put out through our social communication. We've got Lindsay here. Lindsay was an addition, and I think a very good addition. I don't know if you disagree or others, but I think what she's done for us is very helpful, and we can work on getting that piece out. These are the reductions we made over 5 years. If you think it's smart to put, these are the additions because people think we're hiding something, I think it'll be pretty clear to show that we're not. That reductions have been continuous.
Right. So, and nothing personal, Lindsay, at all.
No.
Nothing my comments are, but again, it's the honesty portion I think is missing from these conversations.
So do you think something like that would help that piece then? We're here to work with you, not
Yeah.
against you.
Yeah, it's just starting with the honesty piece and actually telling the true story. Right now, we're telling part of the story, and the community only hears part of the story. They only know, I have a lot more information, but they don't, and you're only showing them this piece.
So then, take this piece, but as soon as it's released, because we'll release this to all staff tomorrow so they have an idea what's going on, and then we'll release it to community, but then follow it up with, this is a breakdown of the last 5 years, what's been subtracted and what's been added by the district in terms of personnel.
That's a start.
Okay. What else?
The-
We can,
And I'm sure you guys know the answer to that. Have we added more than we have subtracted in the last 5 years?
no.
Of course not. So,
But if they need to know, then that's what we
That's-
need to get out there,
that's
because
fine. I mean-
somebody may not have that trust factor, and we're willing to put that out there.
and the reason why I know that is because I was on the board, and I know what we've added, I know what we've have subtracted. So we haven't added, we have subtracted the last 5 years.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to allude that you added more than you subtracted, but what you're presenting is.
That's kind of what that's what I thought you
Let me-
would
let me
say.
clarify.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to allude that you were adding more than you subtracting. What I am stating is that your reductions are looking larger because you're not stating what you added. It looks like you reduced 600, but you really added 439, so really your reduction is only 100,000. So show the whole story to the community and not just myself who's.
So is yours specific to AO? Because that's the one you just referenced. Is that what you're referencing? Is it an AO issue that
No,
you're
it's just-
referencing?
It's the total savings.
Okay.
If you reduce this much, also show what you added.
Okay,
Show both sides.
I see what you're saying. And I would love to have you come to the levy committee meeting so we can work with
I
you
thought
and
we
get
had
those.
2 board members, and then if you had 3, then.
If we announce it beforehand and we say that we will not be talking anything, you're more than welcome to come. And I can meet with, Amy and I can meet with you anytime and pick your brain, and I'd be glad to, Diana. We've got to, whatever it takes.
Any questions?
So, definitely.
else?
I guess the thing I struggle with is, Diane, to your comment about what you've heard in the community is the results of our education. Unfortunately, the kids are the shock absorber in this. I mean, they're the ones that are taking the beating above and below. And I just find that an incredibly fallible reason not to pass a levy, because the kids haven't done to some expectation that they have in education, because there's absolutely not a chance that it will get better after that, if the levy fails. I mean, I can't, as Jim says, he can't financially wrap his mind around, like, why would you want your property tax? I can't wrap my mind around why somebody would hold our children's education hostage to that. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me at all.
The community, again, we've mentioned in other meetings, they're not happy. You know, if they were happy, we wouldn't have this big discussion. They're not happy with the district. And how do they have to voice their concerns? Their vote is a way. I'm not saying the only way, but that is a way. And when I was mentioning before about understanding why someone wants to vote no, hear what they have to say. Or I hear how, I don't know why nobody else hears, or does anybody else hear and doesn't care, but they're not addressing why someone understands this may impact the children. My personal children go to the school district.
Mhm.
This may impact their children. I live in this community. This may impact their property value. But people with the same situations, their children, their property values, they're still saying, I don't care. For one reason or another, I'm not voting for this levy. And we're not hearing feedback on this is what we can do to resolve that group of individuals. Now, you can do the 40-40-20. They're a part of that 20 and 40, which is a good portion of the community.
I don't think anybody's opposed to trying to understand why somebody would be opposed to it. In all my meeting attendance, I've never seen anybody resistant to it. Maybe we have to find a different avenue to get in front of these particular people if they're not going to come to us and share that. I agree with you. I think it's something that you have to tease that out. I'm not disagreeing with you on that at all. I guess part of it is we get so embedded in it, we see it, we breathe it, we see it behind the scenes, and maybe we have a better understanding of it than other people, and there's a cloud of judgment. I don't know, and I'm not saying it's wrong, right or wrong. It's just it all comes down to, I think, just educating and trying to be relational. And the last piece that I hear a lot of stuff as well. Is it's a lot of relationship issue, like somebody doesn't like another person. It could be frontline staff having conflict with the AO, and therefore the frontline staff doesn't support. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me either. Like, I hear that fairly frequently. Again, the child becomes the shock absorber. They're the ones that, when we go down this rocky road, they're the ones getting beat to death over it, for many different reasons.
That's who it's going to affect, the kids.
Absolutely.
It will be a detriment to the kids if the
Not
levy.
to some kids.
To all kids
This is
that
all
are in our
kids.
school district.
We meet after hours on Tuesdays, so we will start brainstorming how we can get together. We'll get together with any of you on how we can reach out, whether it's personal phone calls with us and another parent in the district who maybe has a different perspective, but to do nothing but listen and try to communicate with them. So we'll work with you guys on that.
Yep, my plea is if somebody knows somebody who's a definite no against levy, please encourage them to contact us. And Todd, I know you're always making yourself available, as well as your staff, and I believe the 5 of us would be as well. We don't know what we don't know as far as that climate of position on this thing.
I'll be in buildings all day tomorrow just for support, but starting Wednesday, I'll get in touch, give you guys phone calls, see what you want to do. Chris, if you could go back to the agenda. I do have one superintendent's update. I sent out, there is a conflict With the October 7th meeting, we can cancel the meeting and we will have nothing for approval if you would like. We're already over our meetings for '24, but it's totally up to you. I suggested canceling, or I suggested rescheduling to October 14th. That is, the Board of Education meetings are your guys' meetings.
What was the original date?
October 7th?
Move it to the October 14th? Cancel it altogether?
No. He says just cancel it altogether.
I would suggest, since that was a meeting, to get board members to see another facility at Butler Tech.
I was going to move that to the 28th.
Okay, or even suggest we move it later on in the year, or maybe even the first of the year, since,
Yeah, I was definitely going to take October 28th, get with John Graff and
Okay.
get to a building we hadn't been to, if that's okay with you guys, but whatever you want to do.
Could that be a board meeting, Todd?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, if you don't think we need the 7th, then there's a conflict.
Yeah, I guess my thought would be is let's not put it on a particular date. Let's just see how the climate of this levy is going, and if we need to do, and I'm drawing a blank on the.
Work session at one of the
Thank you, a work
buildings?
session.
Yep.
Have a work session.
It's a good
where
idea.
If people want to come in,
Yep.
we do that.
The 28th then?
On a.
No, the
Okay.
20th.
Just have
So October 7th is canceled. Keep the 28th, and then we'll keep the other one in our pocket to put wherever we need to at one of the buildings if needed for work session.
And I would do a work session in one of the schools,
Yes.
or I always say Northgate Mall. That way we would have a large turnout.
All right, that's what we'll do. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, this is the part of the meeting that if any of you have any questions regarding what we've talked about, you don't have to fill out a card. We do ask, we are going to change this, we do ask that you come up to the podium and just give us your name, so that, because we're having people who watch the video say that when we let you sit in your seats and your backs to the camera, they can't hear anything. So in all fairness to everybody at home that's watching this, but if there's anybody have any questions or comments, you're more than welcome to just come on up. Anybody? Don't be shy, girls. If there's something you want to say, now's your chance.
Hi, Zoe Bloom. So I think when it comes to the levy and when it comes to the deductions and everything, I think, your comment about people are unhappy with the results of our academics. But those academics are going to fall more when you take away things like the arts. The arts are a place where students can kind of get away and focus. And if they can't focus, then they can't do their work and actually succeed. And foreign languages would probably fall underneath something that they take away. And we're the next generation. At one point, we're gonna be up here doing this stuff. And if we don't have the proper resources, then, anything that you guys are concerned about property value, anything is just gonna drop even more if the next generation isn't properly allowed the right resources. So I think when I speak, I'm speaking for all the students.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, Zoe.
Anybody else? Okay.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie Benson. I want to know if we're going to have to reduce our arts program. Like, people like me, I would like to go to college for something like Spanish or something because I would like to pursue, that's my dream, like I want to be bilingual. So, I don't understand how we're going to be able to make people vote yes on the levy if we don't have the proper resources in order to promote it. Like, how are we supposed to, as a student body, how are we supposed to promote for the adults to vote yes on the levy? But our voice isn't as loud as people would hope that it is. So how are we supposed to make people your age vote yes on a levy that affects us? No one really cares about it as much as we as much as they should.
Well, first of all, we need to get you and as many other students to our next levy meeting for sure. Dustin, you can write that down. We talked about how important it is, especially with social media, with what year are you?
21, junior.
Okay, so, you have a voice, and your voice should be the most important, because
Right.
you're right, this is who this is affecting.
Right.
We have students that are 18 now, that we need to make sure your friends, your sisters, your brothers, your cousins are registered to vote,
Right.
to understand what the levy is about. We're publicizing things all the time, trying to hit Facebook, so that's a way where if we can get you guys to help with that and get it in the hands of anyone that's able to vote, and talk openly with your parents, with your relatives, with your neighbors, and talk to them from your point of view, why this levy is important. Because you're absolutely right, and what an awesome goal to be bilingual. And I can speak for myself, I want to do everything possible to make sure that's possible for not only you, but for every other child, student, young adult that's in this district. And yes, there's going to be things people aren't happy with, and yes, we need to do a better job of listening and trying to work together, but bottom line, we've got to be here to support you guys. And it would be refreshing to see you at one of the meetings too. And feel free to be candid. If you have suggestions or ways that we're approaching things, that if you have a different idea of doing it, that might be the fresh idea that we need. So, I know Dustin in the back will get with you, and I can talk to you after the meeting, but, I love that you asked that, thank you.
Mackenzie, your voice is louder than you can begin to imagine.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that it's good that the students are getting involved here with the passage of the levy, because the parents just see the board members and the AO talking about it. They want to hear from you guys, okay? Seriously, that's really important.
So as I was saying, that you are the generation that makes things go viral.
Right.
We don't know anything about that. We don't. You have YouTube channels with millions of followers. We don't have that. Well, he does. JoeYoshimura.com. Look him up on IG. Anyway, but in all seriousness, your voice is way louder than you can begin to imagine. Way louder than the voice that we have here. We're here, because of our time that we've been in the community and our age, but not because we have the actual loudest voice. Actually, you do.
So, like, in past, experiences, I've tried to, make signs for our school for, not for the levy, of course, but, do you think that it would be, allowed now in order to, for us all to make signs to post around the school or, around the community in order to have people vote yes on the levy? Because, I know that some principals prefer you not do that because they don't, I don't know why.
Legally, you can't put a sign up in the school that says vote yes or vote no against the levy.
But legally, as a student, you can wear anything to school that says anything you want about voting yes.
Yeah, you could get a T-shirt and say vote yes for the levy. You could do that, but you can't put a sign or hang a sign in the school.
And the
You make a
reason,
sign and put it in your front yard.
I think the most
So everybody that
powerful-
goes by where you live, they can see the sign, hey, these guys, have all the kids do that at their houses.
And if I,
Yeah, that would be awesome.
also, we could do letters to the editor from these folks. We also are trying, when we speak to public community groups, for example, if anybody lives in the Pleasantland Farms, we are going there September 4th at 7 o'clock. We are taking a parent who is in favor of the levy, and we would be glad to take a student if they would like to speak that night also. So when we're done here, if you could touch base with myself, I'll have my computer, I'll just enter your guys' names and emails, and we'll make sure we get in contact with you.
and you can make signs, just double check your principals are okay with this. There's nothing wrong with making signs to encourage any 18-year-old to register to vote,
Right.
and to remind anyone that knows anyone that's already graduated, if they're away at school or in the service or whatever, we can get you a link that you can post out there of where they can get an absentee ballot. There's a certain date, they have to get that, request it, and mail it back in. You guys can make a huge impact. They're gonna look at that stuff much more from you than if an email comes from me. So you really can make a difference with that. And in talking to other school districts, there are several that did have a really strong student group, and it really was successful. So we will definitely get with you and start working on this.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Thank you.
Come on up.
My name's Cheyenne Goldick. One of my primary concerns right now is hearing that we're taking the resource officers away. So I want to know what your guys' plan is for fights that happen in the school, or if you find drugs in the school, which has been a problem in the past, and just like any type of safety concern, like who's going to be there for us in that situation.
Again, I'm going to speak for me, not anybody else. That's a huge reason I'm going to work my butt off so that this levy passes, so we don't have to cut those resource officers. Because not only resource officers, you saw that at both high schools, they're going to lose an administrator. So that's another person that's, is in the middle of trying to break that stuff up. Those are, I can't answer that. I don't know how anybody, my only answer to that is I'm going to do everything I can to try to get enough support so we don't have to go there. But again, and I don't know if you're comfortable with, but if you want to be a part of going on any of these, any of the talks or any things we're doing, again, I think what you just said in your question, it is so much more powerful coming from your voice, that you're concerned, you're in that building, than any adult in this room to say that. And I really think you can make a difference with helping with that.
I just know that, like, personally and on behalf of all the kids that are sitting over there, that, like, I feel 10 times safer at school knowing that there's an officer on site. Like, I know that if I went to school every day knowing that there was not an officer there, I would be 10 times more distracted, like, always watching my surroundings, being careful when I'm moving from building to building, just, like, knowing that there's no one. Like, it's going to take time. If something were to happen, it's going to take time for people to get there for us. And I would hate to see, like, a tragedy. And, like, some of them have siblings at the younger elementaries, and my mom works at the elementary. And I just don't want to, like, feel, I don't know, like they're not necessarily safe.
You won't feel safe.
I won't feel safe at all if that were to happen. So.
I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else?
My name's Perrin Gordon. I mostly just had a question about the day that the voting happens. I know you say you have 18-year-olds who can get registered and all that stuff. Do you guys give off time for students or staff to vote day of, or is that
We do allow students to leave the building and vote.
on
And
election
Jack and
day?
Susan have always done that.
Okay.
Actually, our
Well,
election day is in service, so
yeah,
our
we're not
students
in- you
will
guys
not be
aren't in-
at
But
school.
even if they're,
We're not
well, yeah.
I don't know, sorry.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
More importantly, we'll be calling those 18-year-olds to make sure they get up and do go vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
we got it.
I just wanted to make sure that that was a thing and that
Yes.
we were
Yeah.
promoting
That's great, thank you.
18-year-olds.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's no school on the voting day.
There is,
I wish all schools were that way.
we still got to make sure our staff gets there.
Yes, okay.
Mhm.
It's just Tuesday. Yeah, that's what I thought.
I'm Gabrielle Harper. So with cutting plan bills and making them in the beginning of the day, I know there's a lot of students, at least at Northwest and at Colerain too, that I've heard about, during that plan bill, if a student has a study hall or something, or they just don't have a class, they'll go to that teacher and get help, and it helps with tutoring. So and then they were talking about cutting tutors down too. So that will also cause academics to fall.
Our teachers do a great job of going above and beyond what they're required to do. They do help during their plan bills. They give it up free of time. So we would have to arrange before school or after school tutoring, do as much as we could. But until we can find alternative ways to change the schedule, that's what would occur.
Thank you.
These are all great valid points that just, coming from all of you, it just makes it so real. So I appreciate it. Is there anyone else? Melissa. Excuse me.
Hi, I'm Melissa Matiska. I'm going to ask a question as a parent in the district, not as an employee. With cuts to music in the elementary school, will there still be music available at the middle school and high school? Will it still be chorus, band, and orchestra? That would be during the day. Would it just be the outside groups that would be under the extracurricular?
Yeah, anything above and beyond the school day would be reduced because we wouldn't pay stipends for those activities to occur. And it would be, depending on the staffing reductions they may make at the high school or middle school, it could be a reduction of music teachers there depending on what they need.
So if the buildings close at 4, would that mean no concerts for those groups? I see I have a 5th grader, so he'll be going to middle school next year.
For this
So-
year, everything that is scheduled would stay in place for our
Okay.
kids, and us controlling for it would be the rentals.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
This extra credit for everybody in Mr. Fisher's class.
I knew you were going to talk back there.
Yeah, my name's Jenna Lee. I go to Northwest. I'm currently taking 2 AP classes and a CCP class. Will any of those cuts affect the AP classes?
It could affect all of them.
Okay.
It could affect some of them. That would be a decision that the administrative team with the teachers who would make at each building to see what course offerings they could keep intact.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anybody else? Well, I want to thank all of you for speaking. I will have to tell you, I was really dreading tonight, and still definitely not one of my favorite meetings, that's for sure, the topic. But seeing those of you young people that spoke up, and each one of you had different questions and suggestions, it certainly gives me hope, and I want to thank you. Okay, we're going to go to other board comments. Joe?
I just want to say a couple things here. I'm very impressed with the young people and their motivation to keep everything intact. So thank you very much. The other thing is, Susan and Jack are here. I have great empathy for you guys if this doesn't pass, because they have got to go into that school and face these teachers and face the custodial staff and face the clerical staff and make the cuts. So let's try to pass this levy and keep everybody intact.
For me, I want to mirror what's already been said twice, but I want to say it again, that I'm so thankful that the individuals who came out and spoke did come up and speak, every single person. Like, it's nice to hear your voice, hear your comments. We want to hear back from you, so I'm very thankful that you guys took the time to come up and speak and share your comments with us. As far as the levy, it's not an easy decision either way, and that's unfortunate. I wish it was an easy decision. That's kind of what I was trying to say, and it's not whether I'm for or against, but it's just giving the other side of it, that we need to take into consideration the whole picture. And when we're taking consideration the whole picture or having some other conversation about it, I just want to inform that there's a lot that's going on in the background. And as far as it being an easy decision, that unfortunately, if there were other things that hadn't happened previously, this probably would be a very easy decision. But because of some of the past that's happened in this district, is making this a tough decision. So that's the comments that you hear from me and that I'm sharing with you, is that I've heard a lot and I've seen a lot here that I'm trying to share with you. And because of these things, are making a lot of people very uneasy, and that's an unfortunate situation. No one, including myself, wants to do anything to impact negatively the students of the district at all in any way, shape, or form. But please understand there's a lot of things that are taken into consideration when it comes to making this vote, and that's all I'm trying to voice.
I guess it'd be 3. Thank you guys for coming. That was awesome. I agree 100% with Diane that your voice is much louder than you imagine. Last Thursday, we had the kickoff at Strickers Grove, which was an amazing kickoff for the school year. That brought me hope, seeing that many people show up and support our district. And just one last thing I want to say is, Todd made a statement here a second ago that, you know, our teachers go above and beyond, and we have this new groundswell of #GoBeyond. I think our teachers always go beyond. I don't think this is something that we don't see them as ever going beyond before, but I think it's a more collaborative go beyond. Hopefully, some of the things that, Diane, you're speaking about, the history of different groups and relationships, hopefully that improves so that the mantra can be really pushed forward, that we set things aside that may have happened in the past and move forward with all that, because it is about the children, period. You know, I 100% do not want our kids to be the shock absorber in this situation at all.
Jim?
Can't agree with you more. I've been on the board for 12 years, and girls, the reason I'm rerunning is because of guys like you. The education is so important now. I can't even explain how important it is now for the education, for you to get a leg up on everybody else. You know, like I said before, I'll never understand voting against kids. And I mean, that's why I'm going to vote yes on the levy and why I'm going to run for the school board, because of kids like you.
We campaign on the board?
Please?
Are we allowed to campaign while we're sitting?
I'm not
on the board?
campaigning. I made my
It
comments.
kind of sounds that way.
Well, that's your opinion.
I'm running again as well, my seat, since it sounds that way.
Okay, and I just would like to say, I totally lost my train of thought now after that, but, no, I think I'll just end it here. Again, thank you. I know I've said a lot tonight, but I know what I was going to say. You guys are an example of, obviously, you've had great role models, both at home and definitely at school. And I think that shows right there what all the good things that go on in the buildings in this district. So I as well will always be here to, and this is not a campaign, this is a promise, I will always be here to support you, because I believe the education of the children of this district is the most important thing. So with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Everybody get home safely.
Can you guys come up here? I would like to.